All right. Well, again, welcome, and this is our very first lunchtime learning series mini workshop put on by the Master Recycler Composters, and we're really excited about it. We hope that this will be one of many series that we can do. We actually were, because of COVID, we kind of were lost there for a while because we put out a couple dozen workshops every year. Throughout the year, so we really had nothing going on. We had, maybe 2 or 3 workshops before COVID hit, but so yeah, we are back in the saddle, and we are planning on providing some more resources and stuff to the community. So I'm really glad to be doing this, and so thank you all for being here. This will be on, this is going to be a 4-part series. This is the first part. So after we do the recording, I'll go ahead and put this on YouTube so that everybody can have access to it, just to give you a heads up on that. So for those who aren't familiar with Master Recycler Composters, basically it's a program within Washington State University's extension, but it's a partnership between Lewis County Solid Waste and WSU. So we're basically the volunteer educational arm of solid waste, really. So we get a lot of our support from solid waste, and WSU gives us kind of our, I guess, our institutional support. And we have a great working relationship, and we do a lot of great things. We are community educators first and foremost. We're made up of just regular volunteers who really walk the talk. Whether it's composting or reducing or whatever. Just great volunteers, and we have a big impact in the community. We volunteer at fairs and Christmas tree recycling and all of that. So that just kind of gives you a little idea of who we are. This lunchtime learning series was kind of developed really for folks on their lunch breaks, hence the name. And so, if that's your case, if you only, I'm going to try to keep these workshops about 20 to 30 minutes, and then we can open up for questions after that. But if you do have to get going, not a big deal. If I see you disappear, I'll know that you had to leave. And so yeah, so they're just these are just like the subtitle says, bite-sized lessons. This is just some of these are might be kind of a refresher, might be brand new to you, and it might just be old hat. And so either way, there's going to be something for everybody. I would like to open it up for discussion afterward. But if you do have a question that if you need some clarification on one of the slides or something that I say, feel free to let me know.
Container to go with her bench.
If I can get everybody to go ahead and mute their mics on their computer, and then I'll try to be looking. Actually, if you unmute and just say something, I've got a question or whatever, I'll try to hear you. I'll turn up my mic so I can hear it too. Anyways, that way everybody can benefit from your question. If you're not familiar with Zoom, there is, let's see, I don't have it on mine because it's crowded out, but you should have a chat function on your little control panel. And if you want to send me a chat, those chats will be recorded, so I'll be able to get to those. If I don't see the chat during this presentation, I'll make sure I still look at it, and I'll get back to you if I don't get to you right now. So, okay. Well, without further ado, and here's our first hiccup. I can't advance my slides. Okay, we'll get there. Of course. There we go. Sorry about that. Okay, so yeah, we're going to cover basic composting. This is usually about an hour and a half presentation that we do at our normal workshop. This will be lesson 1 of 4. I'll have the same picture pretty much for all the different lessons. But in this picture right here, this is our demonstration site over at the Central Transfer Station in Centralia. And we just have, this is a couple of years old, but we have, you notice on one side, on the right side, there's like mostly like commercial type compost bins. And then on the left side, we have more of the do-it-yourself, homemade stuff. And so we are gonna be working on a new, and I'll talk about it later, we are working on a new demo site, but this is still at the transfer station. And I would just, if you're passing through or going to be taking stuff to the dump, I suggest you check things out over there. It's a really neat system. So okay, there we go. So in this week's lesson, we're going to talk about what compost is and the uses of compost and the benefits of compost. And this is going to really just kind of scratch the surface, but you'll understand as we go. All right, well, what is compost? I like to think of compost as a compost bin or a compost pile as a microbe farm, right? So we have all of our little critters that we're raising. We're really as a composter, we're raising organisms, right? Not just creating great soil. So we put our organic matter in there, and it's just decomposing, right? And it's depending, and we'll talk more about this as we go too, but they're depending on the balance of the different things that you need to do for your compost. It'll decompose faster, it'll decompose slow. But what really helps it are those organisms within that organic matter, the bacteria and the fungus and the critters and things like that. All right, it's semi-homogeneous, meaning it's not, it's fairly consistent. There will be in the finished compost. It's not this stuff here on the right side. You kind of figure this is what it looks like in the beginning, and this is during, and this is what it's going to end up looking like. And it's going to vary, depending on what you use, how hot it is, and whatnot, how long you let it age. We'll get into all that. But it's you won't really, good finished compost, you really can't tell the difference between a banana and a cardboard box, right? It's blended together. It's semi-homogeneous, right? And we think of we use the cake analogy for composting. We have our various ingredients. Up here are our ingredients, right? Well, this right here is the cake. So just think of that as think of these up here as the ingredients for a great compost. All right, it's soil-like. It's obviously not soil, and it's not humus, but it's soil-like. So which means that it provides structure for plants. You can actually use it not as a soil substitute, but basically it's kind of like an additive. And it's not, the reason why it's not humus is because humus is actually more or less decomposed compost. It's really, I don't want to say inert, but it's at the most stable form that it can be in. And it's a great soil amendment. Regardless of what you're going to use it for, it's gonna benefit your soil. We'll talk about some of the different benefits and the uses, but just think of it as an amendment. It's not a replacement. We don't want to think of compost as a soil replacement. We don't want to think of it as a fertilizer replacement. It's an amendment. It helps. It helps the soil, and it helps the plants. So there are a lot of uses for compost. We won't get into compost tea and all those other great things, but most people typically use compost for three different things. One, mulching planted areas, and now this can be for strictly landscape purposes, just for beautification, like you'd use beauty bark. It can be for erosion control. It can be for insulating plants during the winter time, and even during the summertime. It will prevent evaporation in the summer, and it'll keep the roots warmer in the wintertime. So there's a lot of different ways to do that, and you can use it around your flower garden, your veggie garden, trees, shrubs, plants, whatever. So there's quite a few uses for it in that way. And then also a pre-planting amendment. This is something that, especially if you live in an area where there's, if there's a lot of clay or sand or something like that, and you just can't, you don't have a great garden, or maybe your pH is too low or something, or your nitrogen or whatever is too low. Compost is actually, it's not pH balanced, but it does range between about 5.5 to 7.5. So it's in that window of pH balance. So you can use it to, I don't say neutralize your soil, but it definitely will, regardless of whether you're going to use it as just as a blanket for like a mulch, or if you're going to till it in, it's gonna improve your soil in a lot of different ways. So as a soil amendment, you see in the picture there, what you do is you'd pile it on there and just till it into your soil. And the reason why you need to till it, you need to mix it in with your soil, so your soil and the compost will actually bind together and mix together and all that. If you just left the soil, like in this picture here, if you just left it, there's actually going to be a barrier between the we'll call it the natural soil that was already there and the compost. And so really true roots and things will be able to grow into it and all this other stuff, but there is going to be a barrier, because it's two different types of soil, right? Two different types of growing medium. So it's important to make sure that gets tilled in, and so that's another use for it. In a potting mix amendment, you can actually directly pot plants into compost. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to have all the correct fertilizers and all that other stuff in there, but it is possible to do that, primarily because you have the support, right? The compost will support those roots and whatnot. It'll hold the moisture and the nutrients, and we'll talk about that in the next slide. So I do want to recommend that if you are going to use it, you do use it just as an amendment, not a standalone potting mix. There are a lot of commercial potting soil mixes that will have compost in it, primarily for the benefits of the compost. But just remember that it's not going to have the macronutrients, the nitrogen, the phosphorus, and potassium, and all that your plants may need. Now, we'll have some of the micronutrients like copper and boron and all those other things that plants need, but only in small amounts. So really, compost is probably the biggest benefit that it provides is the micronutrients, really, because plants don't need a whole lot of that anyways. Any questions so far? Okay. All right, let's talk about some of the benefits. And again, this is just scratching the surface, because I didn't have a lot of room on this slide, but there are a lot of benefits here of compost. I mentioned a little bit before, compost holds and releases water and nutrients. And the way it does that, it's not just so much that the compost is woody and it absorbs the water. It's not like true, it's kind of like a sponge in a sense, but actually what makes it so effective in holding nutrients and water is because they're actually micropores inside the compost, the little pieces of compost themselves. And if you were to look at them, you'd have to see it under a microscope, but those pores actually they'll hold water and nutrients, and it's kind of a chemical, there's kind of a chemical process there, but basically what it does is it binds it to the water, and the nutrients are bound to that particular piece of compost, right? That little aggregate or whatever. And then as the plants go down into the soil, they are able to access those nutrients. And the nice thing about that too is, if you have a lot of clay soil, you really can't. Some of the water and the nutrients are chemically bound to the soil, to the clay particles, and plants can't even access it. Clay really is some of the best nutritious soil because it has so many nutrients attached to it, but it's the plants can't access the nutrients because they're just stuck to it, right? Like a magnet. Well, compost will kind of like break that up. It'll break up that magnetic hold, if you will, and allow plants to be able to access those things. And the same with water too. As the plants go in there, as the plants are growing into the soil where the compost is, they're able to access that water. All right. Anybody who lives in Lewis County, especially in the Chehalis area, has heard of clay soil. If not, cussing at clay soil at their place, but it improves soil structure. And this can actually any type of soil you have. For clay, it'll loosen it up. We talked about the nutrients, how they're bound to the clay soil. The compost will it'll loosen up the soil to allow some of those nutrients to be released out of the clay particles, and it also increases pore space in the soil, because if you know clay soil, it's just packed, right? It's just super tight. It's like concrete. Well, the compost, and it doesn't happen. You don't just put it on the ground and it you automatically have great soil. You obviously gotta work it into the soil, and it may take years to do this over time. But probably the biggest advantage is, like I said, it's the pores. It creates these channels for water to flow, so you won't have that the standing water that you'll have with clay typically. And it also helps with gas exchange, so we don't have all the stagnant air, this anaerobic air under the soil. We're able to, with compost, we're able to let that air exchange happen and really have some cleaner air, in the soil. It's going to be better for the plants, for the roots and whatnot. And obviously the water is going to be a really big thing. And then if you have clay soil, kind of the opposite happens. Clay soil gets bulked up, right? So we have clay soil, clay, rock, whatever. What happens when you water sand? It just goes right down, right? Like this little picture here I added here. It's gone, and very little water can stay in the soil. Very few nutrients. So the plants really don't have a lot to go off of. And so that compost will bulk it up. Okay. And it also, again, because it holds the water, right? You're going to be able to maybe have more varieties of plants if you do have clay soil, you'll be able to have more plants that maybe require more water that sand just cannot provide. And so like up in the Rochester area, North County, that's a big deal up there. They have to import. A lot of people have to import soil just to have a decent garden that they don't have to water 24/7. All right, it recycles organic waste, right? So it's a great way to not just reduce how much you're throwing away, but good grief, why throw away anything that you can reuse? We recycle pop cans and bottles and all this other stuff. Well, why not recycle food, right? So we're using this organic waste that would otherwise go to waste, go to the dump, and we're turning it into something that we can use. Now, for me personally, composting is a way, people compost for different reasons. It can be for for the environment, which is fantastic. I do that as well. They can do it because it's just the right thing to do. Or maybe it's popular. It's fun maybe. So there's a social aspect of it. But then there's the economic side. I tend to be a little greedy with soil. I don't like mowing the yard and seeing a big puff of soil going up in the air from a mole hole. And so I look at all my material that I would otherwise throw away as really as it's not soil, but it's just it's another asset that I can hold on to. And anyway, so it beats burning your paper, and tossing your organic or your food scraps, so let's reuse those things, right, and recycle them. And like I said, it reduces your dump fees. I'm not entirely sure. I don't have statistics about Lewis County, but we'll talk a little bit about what the national average is in the next slide about what we throw away, how much we throw away. But it's disturbing, really, how much food goes to waste. I just had it was a couple months ago. I had a conversation with the UNFI representative locally, and they said that they throw away somewhere like 5 industrial size dumpsters. They throw it away, food away. They take that much to the dump a week. And so I'm looking at this. I mean, good grief, that's a lot of material going to the dump that doesn't have to go to the dump, and who knows how much they're paying to do it. And so, it goes back to that whole economic thing. Why pay to dump something that you can just reuse at home and benefit from, right? And obviously it reduces landfill waste. Our landfills are Melanie Case, Lewis County recycling coordinator, can probably touch on this a little more, but we throw away entirely way too much anything, not just food and other organic matter, but I mean all kinds of things that we could reuse, that we can recycle, and it's a pretty bad situation. In my opinion. Now others might think, oh, we got plenty of land, plenty of holes, that's fine. Not to me. I'd rather reduce landfill waste altogether. I'm going to open. Melanie, do you mind if I put you on the spot here, and can you give us a little state of the landfill?
Well, so I just wanted to add anecdotally, with the pandemic and people staying home, it has been crazy. People have been using their spare time to clean up around their houses. And usually our busiest time has only been on Saturdays. And the other times were, steady throughout the day. But we have consistently had lines out the gate, out the Centralia transfer station on Mondays, Saturdays, and Fridays. It's just crazy. And last year, Lewis County threw away about, I think it was close to 80,000 tons of material went to the big regional landfill in Oregon. I think we're on track to blow that out of the water this year. So there is a huge room for improvement with the amount of food being thrown away, and just the amount of things that I think during this whole stay-at-home time, people have realized, wow, I have a lot of stuff. And it would have been so great if people would have thought about that before they even bought it. Why do we have to be such a consumer-focused society? Can we make do with less?
Great, thanks. Hey, Melanie, tell everybody how many whales in comparison that we throw away there at Lewis County that we take to the landfill. was it blue whales or something like that?
Well, so a blue whale averages 200 tons, the average blue whale. And I would have to go back and look at my slide. But like quickly I can do the math. So if we did, so about 400 tons last year, 400 blue whales, the equivalent of putting a blue whale on a truck and sending it to the landfill. And that's really sad.
Yeah, it is sad. Yeah, that's really too bad. And so that's just one, I mean, and that's not just all food, but that's just an example of, we will touch a little bit more too later on different things that we can, recycle and whatnot, and reuse. But
And it's not just people throwing away their items here at the transfer station.
Mhm.
I've had reports from Goodwill and visiting nurses and the senior thrift shop. All of them are inundated, and Goodwill is so inundated that they're ratcheting back on when they can accept donations. It's like from 1 to 6 every day, and they're not taking furniture because they're so overwhelmed.
Right. Exactly. That's where reusing comes in handy. So thanks, Melanie. I appreciate it.
Okay, well, and I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I've got to step away. If anyone has any questions, I can answer them, and then I've got to go.
Okay. Thanks, Melanie. I appreciate it. All righty. So let's with all the talk about landfills and all this stuff, let's just see how much we throw away every year. This is actually from 2015. They only updated every couple of years. 2017 really wasn't the greatest chart, and this is pretty similar to what this is. So this the municipal solid waste generation in the United States. We throw away at this in 2015 anyways 262 million tons. And if you look at this chart, I mean, you could just pick out everything, right, that doesn't necessarily have to go in the dump. I mean, papers is compostable, yard trimmings, food waste, even wood, but even leather. How many of you knew that leather can be composted? Textiles like natural fibers, not polyester and things like that, but any type of natural fibers, cotton and wool and all that stuff, that's all compostable. And so there's zero reason. I think I added up once. This is like 60% of what we throw away can be composted. And if you like me, if you look at the economic side of that, what's 60% not in your garbage can? You fill up your garbage can to the top just with whatever. If you throw away food and yard trimmings and all that, how much money can you save in just that? So I mean I'm maxed out as far as I use everything. I use Q-tips. I use paper towels. I mean, hair. It doesn't matter. It's not going in the garbage can. And so I'm already saving a lot. But good grief, 60%. Just add 60% to your garbage bill. Or subtract rather 60% from your garbage bill if you start composting. So there is that economic aspect that I think if more people realized, if they're really driven by that, that alone is enough to encourage people to compost. Right. So that's just one way and one reason to compost. Again, there's obviously the environmental issues with the groundwater at the not transfer station, but the landfills and whatnot. There's a lot of the methane release. I mean, so you got some global issues, that go along with landfills and whatnot. So those are just reasons to compost, in my opinion. So, all right. So that actually concludes today's. I said it was going to be kind of a quick one. today, but so each week we're going to talk about something new. This is actually like I said, it's about an hour and a half presentation, breaking up into four pieces. So next week we're going to talk about kind of the guts of a compost system. We'll talk about the different soil organisms, particle size, pile volume, mix ratio, moisture, oxygen, temperature, and time. And there's some little things you know in between that I'll throw in there, but these are the main things that that we need to do properly, and we'll talk a lot about a balance. You know, we gotta have a balance in order to do composting right. So if you think back about the whole the ingredient thing, you know, you got to have the right temperature for your cake. You got to have the right amount of flour and sugar and all this other stuff. Down the road, sure, you can mix it up a little bit, leave some things out, experiment. But yeah, so we're going to go over some of these next week. Okay. All right. And every week I'm going to do a little plug, shameless plug, I admit, for our Floral Park sustainability project. This is something that we are working on right next to the transfer station on Floral Street. It's kitty corner from Centralia Christian School. And we are going to, these are just some of the things down here that we are going to demonstrate to the public. This is going to be we chose park because we want it to be kind of a park setting, not just a environmental education site. You know, we want people to go there and enjoy their time. So we are going to be doing a lot of work, and so donations are very, very welcome. It's going to cost quite a bit of money, but we also need a lot of volunteers. You don't necessarily have to be a master recycler composter to volunteer, although there are some, you know, we have some paperwork and things like that if it's something you're interested in, just liability waivers and whatnot. So if you're interested in it, you can always let me know either during the presentations or you can give me a call. I'll have all my contact information on the next slide. Before I move on though, does anybody have any questions? I kind of moved through the composting part kind of rapidly, I suppose. But are there any questions that you'd like me to go back and cover? Okay. If you think about it, let me know. All right, here's another shameless plug for the Master Recycler Composters. We are going to be starting up an online training course, which we're really excited about. Thank you, COVID, right? We hope to be able to reach more people in the county and really everywhere because it's going to be online. We're focused mostly on Lewis County, obviously. But if it's something that you, I mean, especially during this presentation, you know, some of the different you know, social aspects and environmental issues and whatnot, the economic issues, if any of those things are important to you and something that you would like to share with others, whether you're teaching a class or whether you're helping in a demonstration garden, we do quite a few different things, all for the purpose of education, and obviously to do our part to help the environment. And so so if there's if you have any interest in looking into the program, I won't go into all of it right now, but unless you have some questions, we have brochures and all kinds of stuff that I can send you, unless you have some questions about this, about the program during the presentation. So any questions about this? All right. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. I was shooting for 20 minutes. I wasn't timing myself, but I have a feeling it went a little quicker than that. And I'm not going to fault anybody, but questions definitely make presentations last a little longer. So I know this was a little probably basic for some of you. So does anybody have anything that you'd like to add? I mean, something that maybe you do that has been beneficial as far as composting, maybe a style of composting that you've used. Just out of curiosity, how many of you do recycle? I see Jim waving his hand there.
I do.
All right, Jim.
Yep, we do some.
Awesome, awesome. All right. So this is just old hat, right, guys? Well, anytime if you have anything, I love new ideas. I love coming up with ideas, and I love hearing new ideas. So if you have any great ideas, feel free to mention them anytime. And anyhow, I see a chat here. Let me go to the chat. All right. Okay, I have a huge Great Pyrenees, right? Who shed horribly. Can I add fur to the compost and not get hair in my veggie garden? Great question. Yes, hair, fur, all that stuff's great, and it will break down actually fairly rapidly. And I put any kind of hair that I can possibly think of, even hide. I mean, if you're a hunter, you want to throw your deer hide in there, it's going to break down. I mean, it's going to take longer to break down. Obviously, leather will break down longer than maybe, I don't know, piece of paper, obviously, but it will benefit your pile for sure. And we got another one here. Okay, that was it. We'll go into a little bit more about the different materials you can put in, but just know, if you've been wondering what you can put in, the biggest thing really is no synthetic materials. Really be careful about your microplastics and things like that. I started doing this. I call it a snap test. I'll just kind of put a paper up to my ear, and I'll just kind of barely rip it. And if it snaps, that means that there's a plastic, microplastic, a coating on it. And those things, I find those things in the compost pile all the time. So every time I turn it, I'm constantly picking out little films, and it drives me crazy. Now, some things I've learned, some things are actually like envelope, the envelope windows. Now you got to make sure that it's cellophane based, so it's plant based. Cellophane will break down. It does take a little bit longer, so I recommend if you are gonna do like all your junk mail and stuff like that, shred it or just cut it up or something. I just kind of give it a quick tear, and if it takes me 2 months, 3 months, 2 years to get some compost, that's fine. And I just want to make sure it's all going to get broke up. So, and you can put in as much effort as you want for your compost pile. So, anyhow, well, fantastic. Well, great question.
Hey,
Jim, do you have a question?
Jason, do you put worms in your compost? I mean, do you keep a supply of worms in there?
Nope. Worms find my compost. And we'll talk about that a little bit more next week. But worms, all kinds of insects and arthropods, worms, bacteria are going to find their way into the compost. So you don't have to add worms at all. You can take worms out. It's a great place to get worms, and
right.
You shouldn't have to add anything to it as far as organisms.
I've got a compost pile probably 100 yards from where all my gardens and my other composts are.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a tractor the other day and I turned things over and it's just full of worms. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, grab them out, because there's not going to be any shortage of worms in your bin. I guarantee it. Now you will have, and this is a totally different workshop, but you will have a bunch of different types of worms. You have your great big earthworms, your night crawlers and things like that. Not too many of those compared to the red wigglers. That's what we call the compost worms, or red worms. But there will be a lot of those in your pile. So
yeah,
great. All righty. Well, looks like it's just us, so I'm going to go ahead and stop recording. Thanks again, everybody, for joining our first mini workshop series on basic composting. All righty, and if I can stop recording, there we go.